Advocate and Kevin, you have seen, and the thread seems to be similar. The call for good governance is apparently clear, is what Kenyans are demanding for, Eric.
Yes. And you know the purpose for which impeachment proceedings exist is to actually be a tool for good governance. Because Parliament, as has been stated, one of its key functions and roles is to exercise oversight. And so, in the course of exercising oversight, if there are issues that arise with regards to anyone in office where they have violated the Constitution, then that becomes the proper route and avenue to take, so that as you exercise oversight, you are able to deal with that issue. And I think what everyone is struggling with is the contradiction.
Yes.
For example, there are certain other issues. There are certain sentiments that have been made by the Deputy President prior to this that are leading to his impeachment. You want to ask yourself, for example, where was the National Cohesion and Integration Commission to deal with these issues? There are allegations about, acquisition of wealth in a manner that is not consistent with his earnings. Where are EACC? There's institutions that we have set up to handle this issue. So as we are going through this impeachment process, is Parliament going to ask itself, why are we having, as Parliament, to deal with the question of impeachment in this manner, yet there are organs that would have, in the first instance, dealt with these issues, so that then, arising from having dealt with them in a certain way, Parliament would now be saying that, considering that the NCIC is that, I think, has looked into this and has found these comments to be, raising tribal animosity and all that, and so we, recommend certain actions. So that then Parliament now says, EACC having conducted investigations and having said certain things have happened, and this having done ABCD, but noting that, perhaps the Deputy President enjoys certain immunities as a result of his office, we are now taking this route. It would be interesting if Parliament would impeach on the basis of those allegations. And one of the other things that comes out very clearly is that the mover of the motion appears to have conducted some what you would call very thorough
lifestyle audit
and investigations, and has listed all those properties and whatever. And you then begin to ask yourself, if an ordinary member of Parliament, and in fact, interestingly, from the minority side, can be able to unearth all that, what is happening to our institutions that are actually supposed to be the ones with that mandate? So those are questions that eventually, I'm sure, the teams that will be presenting the Deputy President will be posing to Parliament. And Parliament, actually, if it were to impeach, it must ask itself those questions. What is happening to these institutions? Because these institutions are actually supposed to have the primacy of dealing with some of these questions that have arisen. Because if we are to do things in the right way, then institutions that have primary responsibility should be able to exercise that oversight. For example, if it were questions regarding budget and misuse of resources.
Yes.
Would you not want first that the Auditor General has given certain recommendations, and then Parliament then picks up those recommendations and then says this is it? What would happen, for example, if EACC were to say that we have looked at these allegations, we have conducted a preliminary assessment of them, and we find that there is no credibility in those allegations? Or in the long term, if eventually then there is an investigation and it is found, you know what, he actually acquired this property in the right way, or these allegations do not meet or do not have sufficient merit.
Yeah.
So those are the so many contradictions besides the issues that the ordinary men and women on the street are asking.
Okay, and that then, Kevin, I'll come to you, Eric, on the options available for the Deputy President. And does that then expose the soft underbelly of Parliament because of self-incapacitating a capacity that it bears, and at times overlooking what other institutions can establish, for example, the ACC, the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission, and reports that have been equally handed to Parliament from the Auditor General and the Controller of Budget, but they have overlooked all the misappropriations and embezzlement of funds?
If you look at our Constitution and the manner in which it was crafted, it was clear that any elected official up to the level of a president and a deputy in Articles 147 all the way to 150 would be impeached, and that there would be grounds that would lead to that particular impeachment. And as Wakili rightfully says, and I agree with him, in this particular special motion, in fact it is called a special motion.
Yeah.
And if you look at the Constitution, it goes further to indicate that in the matter of provisions of Article 144 and 145 relating to the removal of the president shall apply with the necessary modifications. So there's an expectation that there would be special motions and that there would also be necessary modifications. But given the allegations that have been produced and that the Kenyans are actually being asked to participate publicly over, there is a modality within which we don't see the strength of institutions that are also constitutional and that also speak on behalf of Kenyans. And hence the reason as to why we need to probably step back and ask ourselves, what is this motivating factor towards the impeachment of the deputy president? Is it political or is it institutional? Because again, we are looking at precedent that would be created in the impeachment of Mheshimiwa Rigathi Gachagua as an individual sitting in as a deputy president, and indeed of the presidency. So a deputy president, the individual and the institution. And in terms of the role of Parliament in exercise of its oversight role, representation, and many others, I think that they have gone probably ultra-vires, if I am right to use that word, Mheshimiwa Wakili, exercising beyond their powers. Because as Wakili says, we have institutions that are expected to be able to speak on behalf of Kenyans around a number of these issues. And if you were to ask me some of these issues from a bare understanding of what is expected of the Constitution and institutions and now Parliament, I think they're also very keen and clear to use the term alleges. Because in all these 13 counts, rather 11 counts, they're actually talking about alleges. This motion alleges. So therefore, we need to begin to ask ourselves, how do we now move from these allegations and propaganda to grounds that strengthen the constitutional expectations of impeaching a deputy president? And that is where the role of Parliament really, in my view, is absolved, so that they allow institutions, most of which Wakili has talked about, to be able to do their work. And if you move further to say, for instance, in number 13, that this gentleman has been bullying state and public officers, do we have affidavits of people who are actually signing and swearing that indeed I was a county officer or a government officer in this area, and this is an affidavit that I'm swearing against the deputy president that he bullied me, and this is a text message he sent me, he made this phone call, so that we are setting a precedent, Abdikadir, that you know, gets us off what we have seen from other impeachment motions, particularly from the county governments, where they are largely propaganda and there are allegations that cannot stand the test of the threshold that the Constitution actually anticipated. And you look at most of what the citizens are saying, they are also of the view that what you are subjecting to us is not about us. Okay. And we have gone through the prioritization issues, and further even what we can also learn, for example, the lack of a national law on public participation.
And this proving to be very participatory. And Kevin, coming to you, if we are to look at these grounds, the last one that you read of accusations of bullying, I mean, Rigathi Gachagua was just a cut from a bigger cloth. If you look at a sitting cabinet minister who did an ethnic profiling of a High Court judge, George Odunga, in 2017, simply because he came from Luo Nyanza. His determinations, which he made as the honorable judge of the court, Wakili, I'm sure you recall these, were tilted in a way that he favored then opposition National Super Alliance. The call for the suspension of this constitution by the Kihari lawmaker then, Ndindi Nyoro, who said now that President Kenyatta should rule with an iron fist and that more tear gas are needed in opposition zones. And not, I mean, even with the start of the year in 2024, the constant assault from the presidency on the judiciary, accusations of corruption, no evidence, however, was produced before the Judicial Service Commission, which is, again, a guardrail if you have complaint against any judge or magistrate for you to present your case so that the matter can be dealt substantively with. Then what does this tell us, Mr. President, of a political system that seems to play a Ponzi scheme here of using institutions as punching bag when it fits them best, and then walks back when it doesn't, and here now throwing Rigathi Gachagua under the bus, who is one of their own, when they were his vocal cheerleaders, when he said Kenya is a shareholding entity and that Kalenjins and Kikuyus have more shareholding than other Kenyans, which isn't the case because we are a secular constitutional state. I mean, isn't this not a blowback on their face and the lacking moral authority for them to appear before the Kenyan public?
I think we find ourselves in a very unfortunate position. The position being that we are now almost saying because someone else has been having bad manners and nothing has happened to them, the fact that someone else has bad manners, it should be excused because, I mean, what is wrong is wrong. Where we are is that this is a motion that is almost built on quicksand. It's built on quicksand because when you look at everything else, yes, the allegations may have been packaged in a way that if you look at it prima facie, there are issues. And to call us a spade a spade, the deputy president has made certain pronouncement and has conducted himself in a manner that does not befit the holder of that office. That is granted. And I think that in a proper case, that should be something that should be frowned upon and should be something that should be castigated. The problem here is that whereas the deputy president, for example, says that this country is owned by shares or certain things where there's a shareholding, if you even look at what the president did, he disbanded cabinet. But when he did reconstituted, he went to Mount Kenya and picked a certain number, went to the Rift, picked a certain number, and then the few that remained, he shared the scraps and picked one here, one here, one here, and brought in what you call a broad-based government. But to be quite honest, the inclusion of one or two members from other regions does not make it broad-based, other than the fact that there could be members coming from the minority. So then the question then becomes, logically speaking, the deputy president has said something which he ought not to have said. But it is reflective of the current makeup of government. So then what are we supposed to do? Yet, you have to remember that it is actually Parliament that has approved those individuals. So you almost feel like the deputy president is being crucified for the mistakes of Parliament and the mistakes of. So we have you find yourself in a moral dilemma, because yes, it is wrong, but how do you support it when the people who are actually supposed to ensure that does not happen are actually the ones moving the motion and have ensured that it has happened? So that moral dilemma, I think, is what is causing a lot of concern to the members of the public. And they are looking at it and they are saying, you know, we would have been happier if you had dealt decisively with the Adani issue. We would have been happier if you had dealt with the acquisition of a system for 100 billion. And you know, we would have been happier if you had dealt with this question of Chief, the funding model, and there's so many other challenges that the country is facing for which you have been elected to actually deal with. And because we feel that you are not dealing with it in a satisfactory manner, when we look at this other issue which you are dealing with, which of course is also important, we cannot understand why you are putting so much effort on this one. And I think eventually, what I'm saying is that whichever way this motion goes, there are certain consequences that are going to be visited on this country. And our biggest problem is that our democracy, in terms of our constitutional structure, is being put to test by this Parliament. We now no longer understand what kind of system we are operating in, because it is no longer a presidential system where there is a leader where there is majority and minority, because the leader of majority and minority, of course, in certain instances, are supposed to have bipartisan engagement. But on this one, we cannot even understand what is happening.
Because is that in part because of the incorporation of the opposition into government?
Yes. That is true.
And what does that then say about the wholesale failure by the political class, in the essence that they prioritize their selfish interests and feed from the same tough strategy continues? It's just kick the can down the road for them. They don't care about healthcare, education, and infrastructure.
That's precisely the point, and that's why I'm saying that you know sometimes when things are rough, you hope. You know, when you're going through a drought and you can see that the clouds are gathering, you know that it's been a difficult season. The drought is almost, but it's looking like it's going to rain, so you start preparing ground. What is happening right now is that you have a system of government that is unable to inspire you, is unable to give you hope, is unable to tell you that there are certain things that we are doing that in the fullness of time will enable you to prosper. And that is now where the country is, and the level of frustration that is being expressed in this public forum.
And we'll talk, Kevin, about the silver lining, but shortly let's cross over to Machakos County and link up with Enoch Muswe. Good afternoon, Enoch.